Next up, we've got one of our young guns in the pest plant team. Rory, we imported him from Auckland. He's come down to Horizons and set up, and he's come with lots of good and fresh ideas around pest plants and how we can do things better and that sort of thing. So without further ado, we've got Rory Johnson from our very own Horizons, and he's talking about prioritising pest plant control, our new approach. Rory.
Thank you very much. Kia ora koutou. Like Mike said, my name's Rory. I'm a Pest Plant Biosecurity Officer at Horizons Regional Council. Today I'm going to be taking you through the Horizons Pest Plants team approach to prioritisation and how we've developed an in-house prioritisation tool to try and provide some rigour around the decisions we make for allocating our external budget around the region. And so our team consists of 7 biosecurity officers, each who look after a different part of the region. And what we do is mostly service delivery. We do offer advice and do the odd enforcement, but majority of work is either getting in the field, getting our hands dirty, or doing contractor management, both ground control and aerial control. And so our day might be jumping into a drain, pulling out some Sagittaria, it could be rafting down the 102, looking for African feathergrass, or we could hop into a heli and go for a flight looking for old man's beard. And while this all sounds fun, and I can promise you it is, we found ourselves being quite overextended and started to ask some very valid questions. Questions such as, why are we doing certain species in one area and not another? Why are we doing certain programs that might not hold up today? And overall, how can we as a team better prioritise our resources over the region? The problem we face is that we have finite funding, like most biosecurity species, regional councils. We have limited staff, 7, to look after 22,000 square kilometres of area. And through this area, from all the way down the Tararuas on the Greater Wellington border, all the way up to past Taupo, it's quite big, I don't think people realise. We have a diverse range of landscapes, as Michael McCartney said earlier. This includes dune systems, wetlands, ranges, alpine forests and farmland. And so we have a variety of production and environmental values that we want to protect as a pest plant team. Along with this, we have an extensive RPMP and rising public expectations about what the pest plant team service delivery looks like. And so we realised that we needed to change some things, but that these changes needed to have hard and fast evidence so that we can convey to the public and council why these changes were for the good of the region. I just want to paint a picture. Imagine yourself in this situation. You're looking after an area. You have cathedral bells suffocating a farmer's bush block, alligator weed choking a stream system. You've got purple loosestrife smothering a wetland, and old man's beard collapsing a forest canopy. If you could only pick one of them, which would you do and why? And this is the problem that we're facing, and it was why a prioritisation tool was essential for our team. It was an aid to get us away from this good old gut feel and provide some rigorous data to help support those decisions, which seemed impossible. And so the idea of a prioritisation tool is great, but we actually had to create it. And so our first thought was, if we're comparing a species in one area with a species in another area, what would these so-called areas be? And so we came up with the idea of species management units. And to standardise them, we came up with a certain criteria of what they needed to be. And this criteria consisted of landscape type, rural, going into peri-urban, going into urban, land use type, farming versus forestry. We also looked at regional landscape, looking at your river catchments and maybe your national parks, regional parks. And we also looked at regional barriers, things like ranges, rivers, state highways. And we also looked at funding. We were creating a prioritisation tool around our external funding. If there were areas that were internally done and didn't need any funding, therefore we didn't waste our time. This was just for external funding. And so here we have our Whanganui woolly nightshade species management units. So we split the whole area up into 7. And we define these by the red being urban, north and south we have orange and yellow, which is more peri-urban. As we go into inland, we get more rural to predominantly forest up in the purple. And these borders are either the Whanganui River comes down the blue, and you've also got the state highway coming up. So with this criteria, we were able to kind of define where those areas were. And by doing this, we were able to get a lot more specific and accurate data to see if control is actually achievable in these areas. And so we had a species management units, but what data were we going to pull from them? What factors? We knew it had to include plant characteristics and environmental concepts. And we knew it also had to be easy to use, but also robust enough to help support the decisions we made. And so in the end, we, after a lot of deliberation, came up with 10 factors. So the first, community connection. Is there a community group involved in that area? If so, what does that look like? External risk. Are there other agencies in the area as well? Are they doing any work? Are they not doing any work? If they are doing work, to what degree is that work being done to? We looked at abundance, area of occupancy. Pretty much if you take all the plants in that species management unit, put them together, how much area does it cover? And then cost. And the way we did cost was looking at if we were to achieve 0 levels and maintain 0 levels, we defining 0 levels as absence of adult plants. Over a 10-year period, how much would that cost? We looked at knowledge of infestation, sort of like a confidence interval. How confident is that biosecurity officer knowing that species management unit and the infestation within that species management unit? We looked at control methods, both physical and chemical control. Are they effective and practical? If you've got old man's beard on a cliff face, physical control is not that practical. And if it is, it's quite expensive. Persistence of site, pretty much seed bank. How long are you going to be going back to that species management unit for to control that species? And then economic impact. How does that species impact the infrastructure or land use on a farm? Does it reduce the yield of the crop? Does it damage fence lines? Things like that. Then we got a bit more complex. Proximity. We wanted to find out the environmental and production values of our region, the key ones, and what they provide to us. And so, some deliberation and external talks, we came up with 13 regional values, environmental values, things such as Tongariro National Park, Whanganui National Park, Tararua Forest Park, these really big natural areas. And then we looked at production values, and we were able to use already established river catchments, which we call water management zones, to divide the whole region up into these 44 production values. And so the first thing we wanted to look at was, okay, what benefits do each of these values provide to us? And the easiest way to do that was looking at ecosystem services. And the way we did this was we took the land cover database. And using the land cover database, we were able to pull from each of those values the hectareage of each standard ecosystem. Then using Peterson 2008, a real paper, we were able to identify the value per hectare of each of those standard ecosystems. In dollars. And then doing a little bit of math and some spreadsheets, we were able to find the average value per hectare for each individual value, both production and environmental. And this allowed us to now compare them. And this was one of 6 different minor factors that went into the proximity factor. We also looked at the size of the value, the iwi presence within it, the ownership, is it rateable or non-rateable? We looked at for environmental, the recreational and tourism aspect of it. For production, we looked at the economic value, and then for all of them, we looked at the weediness average, which we define by the transformative species within that area. And how this was incorporated into the species management unit was that if any of these were present within that unit, then they would be averaged and used for the final score. Our last factor was rate of establishment, looking at kind of plant characteristics. Dispersal mechanisms, is it windborne, waterborne, is it bird spread? Looking at seeding length, how long does it take for that species to go from a seedling to maturity and that start spreading? Seed frequency, how often does it seed? Does it seed all year round or just annually? And so now we had our factors and we had our species management units, we had to come up with a scoring system. And due to some complex things and some spreadsheets, we came to a decision to do it like a golf system. Don't ask me why. But this meant that a low score is a higher priority and a high score is a lower priority. And this will come into play later. So what was the use of it? For us, we developed it to try and provide some rigor around allocating our external budget. And so how we did this was for each species management unit that we created, we also allocated a budget towards it. Using the prioritisation tool, we then ranked each species management unit, and then from the highest priority down to the lowest priority, we went through our external budget allocating till it was fully allocated. But the uses for this have other potential. RPMP reviews coming up, looking into the allocation of species within an RPMP, should it be an eradication, containment, maybe sustained control. Also looking at the inclusion or exclusion of species within an RPMP. There could be uses as well for priority habitats or site-led, looking at which habitats should be prioritised first. So I'll do a little 5 to 1. This was our top 5 that came out and kind of the reasons why. So Herbertville woolly nightshade. Like most of you know, toxic to stock, impact to the environment, and is a big spread risk if left unchecked. There's a low infestation within the Tararua district at the moment, and so by ongoing control and helping protect it from other areas in the landscape, it means that it should be a high priority for us, and the tool's shown this. Number 4 is Mangoni alligator weed, which you've heard about today. One of the worst aquatic weeds. It is a flood risk. It's an aggressive spreader, and it impacts a native biodiversity within a stream system. We've managed to contain this to very low numbers, and by continuing to do so, we can protect downstream biodiversity and urban infrastructure. Number 3 was Wanganui Chinese Pennisedum, located in the Wanganui River Trench. This aggressive invasive species is a big threat to one of our iconic, culturally significant and ecologically vulnerable areas, Wanganui National Park. And at this stage, there's still a realistic chance of eradication, and being the only one in the country, the tool's reflected that and shown it to be one of our priorities. And number 2, Tararua Cathedral Bells. Aggressive climber, it has severe ecological impacts, most of you probably know, just completely suffocating, collapsing native canopy. Only one of the few in the region. By prioritising it now, we can help protect Tararua's native bush, river margins, and just rural landscape from it having the devastating effect that we see throughout New Zealand. And then number 1, my little baby, is Palmerston North Sagittaria platyphylla. So Sag creates these dense stands that blocks waterways, it displaces natives, and it reduces water quality for native flora and fauna. We've also managed to get this down to really low numbers, and by continuously controlling this, we can protect our assets downstream, one of which is the internationally significant Ramsar site in Manawatu Estuary, which some of you might be going to tomorrow. On the other end of the spectrum, there were some that didn't do so well and came out quite low priority. Palmerston North, Old Man's Bed, and it was a theme for most of our urban areas, didn't do too well. The high cost, high abundance and impracticality of doing control within the urban area, as well as just the minimal production and environmental effects associated with urban areas, meant that all these factors contributed to coming out quite a low priority. And our Waimeha Darwin's Barbary, one of our legacy programs, and this was a common theme as well for our legacy programs. We had been doing this for decades, had put a lot of money and resources into it, However, there was still a high abundance and high cost associated with it, minimal community involvement, and the impacts weren't as bad as we thought they were. And this was one of the many reasons why we did it, to look at what we've been doing for decades that might not stack up, and the tool showed that these certain things didn't. And this meant that we could now allocate our resources elsewhere to better prioritise them. And so through the process, we identified a few key takeaways. The first being that the tool is just an aid. There's many external factors interwoven into why we do or don't do certain programs, as many of you may know, and these just can't be given a value and calculated. And so at the end of the day, the tool was there to support the decisions we made, but not answer them for us. Joint efforts go a long way. If we were doing control within a species management unit and this was being supported by others, then this was positively reflected in the tool. However, if they posed a risk to the control we were doing in that species management unit, then this had a big impact on the final say of whether or not we would do long-term control within that species management unit. Being open to change, biosecurity is ever evolving, and it needs to be because we work in such a dynamic environment. But by embracing change and being open to ideas and input from others and even externally, we were able to create a robust tool that found options that maybe we didn't even think of before. Throughout the process, we were consistently revising and refining the tool and challenging the decisions we made. We kept going back, and every time we found what was and wasn't working, and actually saw some gaping holes in the calculations we had made 2x previous, which shocked us quite a bit, but is why you go back and look over your tool. And most importantly, we asked the question, what could we do differently? There's a great saying, you probably know, by Albert Einstein, but he says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If we just keep doing the same thing, nothing's going to change, and we won't be able to see what's going wrong in the current environment. So I'll leave you with a question. Can you prioritise in your region to be more effective and efficient with the pest plant control you do? Thank you very much.